So this housing market downturn just hit another gear. The prices are dropping and dropping fast, and sellers are taking big losses, like on this house behind me, everyone. This is an example of someone who bought at the peak of the bubble, and they're now deep in the red. And this is something you gotta be very careful of out there. If you're a home buyer, a seller, an investor, we're seeing people get wiped out right now. On this listing, they bought it for $475,000 at the peak of the bubble in October 2022. Now it's listed for $430,000, a $45,000 loss in less than 2 years. And we're just seeing more and more examples here down in Florida, in Texas, in Tennessee, and Arizona of people losing money on houses. They told you that this wouldn't happen. Most of the mainstream in real estate said that no one would lose money, that the prices would keep going up. But now I'm showing you on this channel lots of examples of that. And I think the question is just how bad is this downturn gonna get? Because the home prices have been very overvalued the last 2 years, and they were overvalued because the inventory was low. We had low inventory, which pushed the prices up. But now inventory is spiking, everyone. We have over 900,000 listings on the US housing market, according to data from Realtor.com. That's only 26% below pre-pandemic levels. And if you isolate that inventory to the South in particular, the South is now back to pre-pandemic inventory, and it's rising fast, suggesting that values here in southern states, you could see on the map here on ReventureApp, these areas in red, could go down and go down by a lot over the next 6 months. Because one thing is very apparent, everyone, and that's that the Fed rate cuts that were supposed to save the housing market, they aren't doing anything to stimulate the housing market. We're about 2 weeks now into Fed rate cuts, and we haven't seen any meaningful increase in buyer demand. The mortgage application index, it's still down 43% from 2019 pre-pandemic levels. We're still 43% lower on people going and looking at a house and applying for a mortgage to buy a house. So the buyers are still on the sidelines. Google searches for homes for sale are at the lowest level in 5 years. We're just not seeing the return in buyer demand. Maybe there's been a little bit of an increase, but barely even noticeable. And this is a big problem because the buyers were supposed to come back. Remember, everyone was telling you that the buyers would come back. All the big realtors, all the big mortgage brokers were saying the buyers would come flooding back. They're not. Because the affordability, everyone, is still in the basement. Home buyers in America need to spend 40% of their gross income in order to afford to buy a house today, 39–40%. The last time the affordability ratio was this bad was 2007, 2008, right before the worst crash of all time. Now, many people say we're not gonna have a crash. I see that bandied about more and more, that there's gonna be no crash, no correction. Housing is gonna stay expensive forever. But I want you folks to think about the listings that I'm showing you on this channel. Every day, I find a new listing down here in Florida where a seller's taking a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $70,000, $80,000 loss from what they paid for it. In fact, there's a listing down in Punta Gorda that I actually showed you guys a month ago where the seller has done an even bigger price cut. They cut it another $65,000 down to $295,000 when they originally had it listed at $530,000. So the seller has done a 42% price cut, and the Zillow value estimate on that house is now back where it was in 2015. Unbelievable. But you know what, everyone? Maybe it's not so unbelievable because we still have listings like this here on the housing market, everyone. This house is listed for $699,000, which is still $60,000 more than what the owner paid for it in 2022. When just one block over, we have an owner that bought at the peak in 2022 and is selling at a $50,000 loss. So that shows you how bifurcated this market is right now. We have certain sellers that are still out to lunch and don't know what's going on and are still trying to get crazy high prices. We have other sellers back there, who I'm gonna actually reveal to you in a second who that seller was over there, who are more realistic in pricing their properties at big discounts. And this is an example of the bifurcated nature of this housing market, and it's time for the sunglasses, everyone. It's getting a little bright. I actually got the Ray-Bans on today. I normally wear Panama Jack sunglasses. Many of you have emailed me, actually, about the sunglasses I normally wear in my videos, which aren't these. It's another pair with kind of the silver on the side. I got those sunglasses at a gas station for $15 in Arkansas. And they're like my best pair of sunglasses ever. These Ray-Bans were $200, and I don't like them nearly as much. Goes to show sometimes you don't need to pay a high price to get a quality product. Anyway, sellers on homes like this are gonna be in for a rude awakening because in this zip code here in St. Petersburg, the market has just completely shifted. Inventory is up 70% from long-term norms. We have 170 homes for sale on the market. We haven't seen supply that high in a decade. Meanwhile, the DOM, the days on the market, surging. House over there has been on the market for something like 130, 140 days. But now I'm gonna take you guys across town and look at yet another big price cut here. This is on a more expensive house. It was originally listed for $850,000 earlier this year here in the old northeast of St. Petersburg. Now you can see it's a cute house on the inside. No buyers at $850, so they've had to cut the price down to $680. So it's been a $170,000 price cut here. So we keep seeing these big price reductions even in these nicer neighborhoods. And so that's a cue to me that we're also seeing the wealthier contingent of people also start to come to reality here, because a lot of the people that moved here during the pandemic from states like New York and California, they're starting to move back to where they came from. This neighborhood in particular was one that a lot of the remote workers moved into. And we can see some of them are getting called back into the office. Amazon just announced you got to be in the office 5 days a week. Dell just announced you got to be in the office 5 days a week. So more and more of these corporations who let their workers work remote, they're saying, no, now you got to come back. And so that's going to have a tough effect on a housing market like Florida, or maybe like in Idaho or Montana, where there was a lot of remote workers. And again, some of this was just logical that this would happen to everyone. There was a pendulum shift in one direction. Now we're going to have a pendulum shift back in the other direction. I think more towards the legacy markets that used to be popular. So New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, and LA. Those were markets, in addition to DC, that were like the desirable markets for a long time. They were less desirable during the pandemic. I think they're going to become more popular again as people move back into cities, as remote work becomes less influential. Many of these housing markets are actually really tight right now. Like in LA, prices are continuing to go up. In Chicago, they're continuing to go up while they're going down in Florida. By the way, this is a house that's under contract. I didn't know that they actually did this, like fumigating the house. Obviously, this was in Breaking Bad. They fumigated the houses in the show Breaking Bad. I don't know if you guys have watched that show, but they would fumigate the houses, I guess, for termites. And then in the show Breaking Bad, they would cook meth in the house. I've actually never really seen this in person before. It says there's deadly poison on the inside. So definitely don't go inside one of those things, deadly poison. Interesting that the house would be for sale while it was undergoing fumigation. I'm guessing it probably went under contract prior to the fumigation. As a condition of closing, it had to get fumigated, maybe because they found termites. So termites, that is one thing to think about if you're a buyer in Florida and many other markets. Are there termites in the house? Particularly if you're gonna pay $700,000 for a house, you don't want to pay 700 grand and then find that there's termites. And so I think an interesting question to ask is, what's the true market price in an area like this in Florida, or you could be in Texas, you can be other parts of America? What's the true market price? Because we have all these different sellers thinking different things about where the market is. And what I think is going to happen over the next 6 months is we're going to see more of these big price cuts that I've been showing you make their way into the sales comps. And when we see that happen, we're going to see more sellers have to get with reality on what they can ask for their house. Because lots of sellers, everyone, I just want to explain the seller psychology to you for a second so you understand. If you're frustrated out there in your city, in your neighborhood, you're not seeing lower prices. I want to explain how these sellers think. They think not about actually the market trends. They think about what they think their house is worth, which is often based on what their neighbor sold their house for 2 years ago. Because when their neighbor sold their house 2 years ago at a peak price, the seller in their mind got an idea of what their net worth was and what they could then net in proceeds after selling the house and paying off their mortgage. And so the seller has a figure in their head that they want to net. Here in Florida, I mean, it's basically break even. You can't really get any better than break even anymore in Florida. Many sellers are just kind of debating of like, oh, break even, or am I going to accept losing money? As we see more of the big price cuts enter the sales comps, I suspect we're going to have to see more sellers get with reality. More realtors are going to get with reality when they list homes for people, because they're going to say, hey, here are the comps. This doesn't look so great. Because I bring you back to the original house we looked at in this video, where they've cut the price from an original sales price of $475,000 to $430,000, $45,000 loss. Who's the seller? Who's the owner? You guys probably can guess at this point. It's Blackstone. This is yet another house that Blackstone is selling in Florida. This is probably the 5th one that I have now shown you on YouTube and Instagram. And so these Blackstone homes keep popping up, and they're taking a loss on every single one. And it's because one of their entities, Home Partners of America, that Blackstone purchased 3 or 4 years ago, clearly they're unwinding the Home Partners of America portfolio, and they're just selling it off. In terms of understanding where the true market price is, it's definitely closer to what these investors are selling at, who are just fire selling, because they don't have an emotional attachment to the house. They just realize that they want to sell it, and they don't really care if they lose some money. And so this house is sitting on the market now at $430,000. It might have to go lower. You can see it looks okay on the inside. I don't know if you guys would pay $430,000 for that house. You can let me know what you think it's worth. But as more of these investors sell and enter the comps at big losses, the homeowners over there are going to have no choice but to accept that there's a new market price. Now, I'm going to actually show you guys in a video very soon another example of this. It's even better. It's up in Ocala, Florida. It's not really an area that's affected by the hurricanes. It's just kind of like, Ocala is kind of like Texas. Imagine if Texas were in Florida. That's what Ocala is like. Lots of cows, lots of horses. This guy bought in a D.R. Horton development in mid-2022 for $360,000, and he's now selling for $290,000. So he's taking a $70,000 loss, and it's a short sale. So you know it's a mortgage default. But again, in that neighborhood in Ocala, which I'm gonna go to soon and show you, there's other people still listing the same house at $350,000 because they think their house, which is the same identical floor plan, bought at nearly the same time from D.R. Horton, they think it's worth $350,000, even though there's a house, the identical house, on the market for $290,000. And the only way I can reconcile that is that the $290,000 house still hasn't sold and entered the comps. Like, that's what's amazing about most of these listings I am showing you, is they are not even selling. I've probably done like 10 videos now showing you huge price cuts in Florida. Almost none of these houses have sold, which is amazing unto itself and shows you the weakness in this market right now. But as they sell and enter the comps, many of these owners are going to have no choice but to get with reality and reduce the price, because folks, there's no savior coming. You know, this is the one thing you got to realize if you're in the housing market right now. Fed rate cuts, not really doing too much. Economy, weak, especially in the Sunbelt boomtown states. The economy seems to be turning down. You know, where's the savior going to be? Investors buying? No, the investors are selling. And as more and more people realize that there's no savior, the market's going to correct. These individual listings are going to turn into the actual aggregate market declines. When you go on Reventure app, instead of seeing a 1% decline or a 0.5% decline month over month, you'll see a 3% decline month over month. You'll see values going down substantially until a point where the local home buyer can afford it. Because this is the other piece to the downturn. You guys don't want to miss it, right? You know, I think you're seeing it start to happen here in Florida, in Texas, and other parts of the Sun Belt and Mountain West. You're seeing it start to happen, but you don't want to miss it. And the way that you don't miss it is you track the data month by month, and you see how much of the value is declining and how overvalued is the market still. If the market's still 30–40% overvalued, you know, we're not in danger of hitting a bottom. We're not in danger of hitting a bottom if the market's 30–40% overvalued. It means there's still room to go on price declines. Conversely, if a market is undervalued or fairly valued, which there are some counties and zip codes and metros in America which are undervalued or fairly valued, then there's just less of a chance that prices are going to drop. So that overvaluation, undervaluation metric is a really key one for you to understand as a buyer, investor, or realtor, in terms of kind of segmenting the market, understanding how much more downside there could be, and then you're going to want to combine that metric with the home price forecast metric on Reventure app, as the price forecast tells you in the short term where the price is heading. So if you see heavily overvalued market, like here in Florida, with short-term home price forecasts really low, like in the 30s, you're saying to yourself, oh boy, lots of downside. If I am going to make offers, I should make offers well below asking price. Conversely, if you're in a market that's not as overvalued and where the home price forecast is higher, like say upstate New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, you know that you're going to have to be more aggressive if you're a buyer who wants to buy, because you're not going to see declines, at least imminently, in markets that are less overvalued and where the home price forecast score is higher. So I would really encourage you guys to become an expert in those two metrics. So to access that data, head to www.reventure.app right now, sign up for a premium plan. The cost is $39 a month. What I would actually encourage some of you to do, though, is sign up for the annual plan, which is $399 a year, which is actually a 15% discount to the monthly plan on a monthly basis. So if you sign up for the annual plan, you get it for something like $32, $33 a month. That's a great value, especially for some of you. I know you're going to have a more long window in terms of evaluating the market. Sign up for that annual plan.